Howdy folks, welcome back to Hive Prometheus. It's been a little while since my last video. I was doing some work compiling some images and some notes on my recent RTT that I had this past weekend. It's just a 3-round event. I took Crusher Stampede, as you can see in the title here. I knew it was going to be a little bit of an uphill battle based off the terrain that we were playing on and the local meta, but I wanted to try to stretch my wings a little bit and see what it could do in a more competitive environment, because in scrimmages it had been doing pretty well. And I wanted to see what the proverbial glass ceiling was for the capabilities of the detachment. So first off, let me throw us over to my list really quickly, and then I'll go over some of the images of the games. Let's go one thing at a time, and let's go up to the list. All right, for any of you who have been following my Crusher Stampede series videos here, this list will look very similar. I've only made a couple tweaks to it. I have my normal Battleshock tech of the Neurotyrant, Old One-Eye, and the Neurolictors, and the Death Leaper is there to infiltrate up with the Neurolictors and help, giving -1 leadership on those Battleshocks at the top of my command phase. 2 Malceptors, 2 Harspexes, 2 Excrins, and 2 Tyranifexes, each with a Rupture Cannon and an Acid spray. 2 squads of 10 Gargoyles, Biovore, 2 Rippers. These are my secondary scoring. This is the meat of the list. Pretty straightforward. I thought that this was going to do pretty well compared to what I had been running, well compared to some of the other lists I was running in my test list. But let's go ahead and roll over to game 1 here. Just as a quick aside, this was the type of terrain we were using, and it was a WTC style terrain. There were a few differences in that all of these were single story buildings. Infantry, regardless of their height, if they were in the footprint, could not be seen, which made the objective in the north and the south here pretty difficult, gave a strong and a weak objective in the midfield to each opponent. As you can see here, it also made it quite difficult to move my monsters through. In order to be able to see out of these pieces of terrain, you had to be wholly within the piece of terrain and have line of sight outside this building. So I knew it was going to be a little bit of an uphill battle. This style of terrain really does lend itself more to an infantry heavy list. Something like Vanguard or Unending Swarm probably would have done much better here, but I was pretty determined to take Crusher Stampede and try to make it work anyway. So with that, now we will go on to the pictures of the games. So first game here, I must have been at the mercy of the gods, because Best Coast Pairing thought that it would be funny to match me against the same person that I practiced against in that Death Guard game that I reviewed previously earlier in the month. So it was a very similar list, except that this time, instead of having Rodigus, he had a Rhino full of Plague Marines up here. Not knowing what the potential damage of a Brigand is, I was a little bit more bold putting my Neurolictor onto the objective there. He said that it was a little bold in the case that he gets overwhelming force first turn. He could run up and try to kill the Neurolictor, which is something I did not think about, but that's something to learn in future games. He counter-deployed and tried to zone me out with his Nurglings down here. I'm kind of just trying to set up here so I can hedge my bets. I can control these 3 objectives. This one here, I am trying to keep him occupied. He does have a Brigand here, some Cultists that potentially can sticky this. He's going to sticky this in the back, and then once he sticky this in 1 turn, he has the ability to push in. But I was trying to make it so that he would at least be a little timid to come in, because we both know the capabilities of each other's lists at this point. So I think this is actually turn 3. I've moved my Harspecs up. I charged. I killed the Cultist with the help of Death Leaper here. Death Leaper got overwatched and took some damage, and then also got wounded by the Cultist, leaving him at 1. I rapid ingressed in Old One-Eye down here, and then I was pushing up with my Harspecs in here. I was able to blow up the Rhino, have the Marines pile out, and then they subsequently came in and murdered me with crits on 5s. That is a pretty good ability, and honestly, I think for the state of the game, I think any faction or detachment that gets crits on 5s for lethals or sustained ends up just making it so you have like 50 to 66% more output. I think it's actually unhealthy for the game state, but that's my little soapbox moment here. I was able to put both my Maleceptors in an okay spot. He doesn't really have Deep Strikers, so I don't have to worry about my backfield too much. He left my Neurotyrant on 1 wound. In the case that he got Bring It Down, he could just get her as an easy Bring It Down kill on top of my other monsters. I did okay to match him in the first 3 turns, and then turn 4, Morty moved in, was able to kill everything on the objective here, and then these Plague Burst Crawlers were actually able to move to the middle, and then they had range to shoot anything on the board, and he spiked pretty high with the Entropy Cannons, ended up killing, I believe, the Tyranifex in 2 or 3 activations, and then Morty was able to come in and threaten my backfield. So this must have been at the bottom of 3, having him go first, because I was able to deep strike my gargoyles in. I'm trying to zone out Morty, but as I said, the Plague Burst Crawlers are going to make their way in here. Morty is just going to come through here and then threaten my backline. So actually the The Tyranid didn't end up dying here. He died in the middle here after I moved him up. I thought my Maliceptor was going to be able to stick it out in combat after moving out from the center here a little longer, but crits on 5s, man, with lethals and sustained, it ends up being really, really good. So the Plague Marines end up just being a problem for me because their damage output was high enough, and I didn't have the volume of shots and the line of sight to see them. I did try to put some shots into them with the Exocrine here, but it ended up just not being enough. My Tyranid whiffed. I don't think he was able to kill the Brigand here, but he was able to bring him low, and then with my activation for melee, I decided to just kill the Brigand and leave the Plague Marines alone. All things considered, this board did have a middle objective. So whereas last time we played on Vital Ground, I lost by 5. This one I lost heavier. I believe I lost 75 to 100, which is unfortunate because I think I already knew the outcome of the game going into this. Death Guard are just essentially a hard counter to Crusher. They lower your toughness, they can lower your save, and then Mortarion has an ability to ignore all modifiers. So if he's within 9 inches and is targeting the Tyranid, you cannot use your ablative plating to blank a save. So the entropy cannons were able to just thread all of their shots into the Tyranid and kill them on the objective. So not anything that takes away rules from me, I think, is a little bit of a feels bad. So I think for the current meta, Death Guard are just kind of a little bit of anti-Tyranids at the moment. I kind of wish that we had hyper adaptions like they have hyper contagions like we did in 9th, but it is what it is. On to game 2 after lunch here. So game 2 was actually against the Tau player that I played as a practice the night before, and this was the same mission. It was Purge the Foe with the same lists. So he's got triple Devilfish, triple Riptide, he's got a Hammerhead, and then he's got some Stealth Suits and some Tetras. I felt pretty confident into this army just because the relative output of the Breachers into my monsters on the objectives is much lower than if they were shooting something where they could wound on 4s or 3s rerolling. But I made this careful consideration of not having to tow my monsters on unless I had already gotten everything to the midboard. At this point, I think it's either end of turn 2 or turn 3. I have my Rippers come in just to screen his Deep Strikers. I think he was able to bring in some of his Crisis Commanders in the back here. Afterwards, I was able to come up with my Haruspecs and threaten the vehicles here. So my game plan ended up being kind of the same. You know, my Exocrines kind of want to thread this area of the deployment. My Maliceptors and my Terrorfexes want to be in here, and then my Haruspecs just want to push up and be in here. So this game went relatively to plan. He kept Longstrike alive much longer compared to our scrimmage game. In our scrimmage game, he moved him up, and I was able to blow him up with the Tyranid turn 1, but he knew that that was going to be one of his larger damage dealers, so he was able to kill some of my other monsters, but never chose to fire it into the Tyranid because I was saving the ablative plating blank specifically for this so that I didn't have to eat d6 plus 6 damage. The rule for monsters was that if they were wholly within the terrain and they were tall enough to look over the terrain, they could shoot out. So once my Tyranid got here, I'm benefiting from cover, and I can see out to all of his vehicles. Now, they'll get cover because I can't see the entirety of their vehicles, but I was using Swarm-Guided Missile, so I could ignore cover with them. I believe this was end of turn 3. I've put my Gargoyles into the middle here. I'm trying to distract a majority of his units from coming in and taking the objectives. He did end up drawing some relatively good secondaries to come and threaten my midboard, so he was able to shoot rapid fire with everything on turn 3, kill the Gargoyles, tank shock, and take this objective from me. But seeing as this was priority targets, Purge the Foe, I just had to hold 1, hold more, kill 1, kill more, and I did end up doing that in the majority of my turns. I didn't end up maxing my score like I did in our practice game, but I did very well. So final score here was 94 to 70. I felt pretty good here. Now I'm at least at a 1-1. I was hoping that in round 3 that I could be matched with one of the Marine opponents. I felt like Crusher Stampede could do fairly well into Marines. The ones that I did not want to match up into were either the Black Templars, the Ironstorm list with the Imperial Fists, the Chaos Demons, or the Tyranids, and fate would have it that I matched into the Tyranid mirror match with Invasion Fleet. So I'm looking at the list here. So he's got the same Battleshock tech that I do. He's got the Neurotyrant, he's got Death Leaper, and both Neurolictors, and we both just decided we're going to throw them all onto our strong objective. I don't have anything here to really root him out other than Old One-Eye in Deep Strike I'm sorry, in reserves, and then my Haruspex in reserves. So between the amount of wounds and the amount of invulns, I could probably only kill one of them each turn. And then having, I believe he had an Exocrine in reserve as well. So he has two Exocrines, two Maleceptors, Old One Eye with his two Carny buddies, the Hive Tyrant, the Biovore, the Pyrovore, and then three groups of 10 Gargoyles. So just starting off, if you haven't done the calculation like I have, he wins this game. He has higher defensiveness with rapid regeneration. So anytime I try to target something to kill one thing at a time with the Tyranifex or the Exocrines, they have a 5-up Female Pain. He additionally took lethal hits on monsters and vehicles, which gives him about a 16% damage boost on anything he shoots at, and he can ignore the wound roll on my high toughness things. So I already knew this terrain, this list against invasion, I'm going to lose this. I just am. So my sense of novelty here and my sense of challenge, maybe I was a little defeatist in the beginning, but I was like, if I can get 65 to 70 points here, I can get a little bit higher in the placings. In order to break 50% and get into 9th or 8th place, I probably would have had to get higher points than that. But going forward, at this point, I did bring an Old One in the top. I have the Maleceptor there to give all of them -1 to hit. I'm using my OC4 against his OC3 to take this objective. I had a really poor turn 4 where Death Leaper wounded 4 times on my Maleceptor, and I failed all of my 4-ups and it did 8 damage to him. That was a huge swing. I probably lost... let's see, it's 4 points for the middle objective here on Vital Ground. So I probably lost 8 points just from that from turns 4 and 5. He was then able to move up with all 3 of his monsters and kill anything on this side. There was no resistance. And then similarly, he was able to make a 12-inch charge with the Old One Eye squad around the crate into my Maleceptor, killed the Maleceptor, pile into my Tyranifex. Tyranifex with Swarm-Guided Missiles was able to kill 1 or 2 of the Carnifexes through the Feel No Pain over those 2 turns, but Old One Eye kept just chopping away at the Tyranifex. I blew him up for D6 and didn't kill Old One Eye. So in this game, I killed a bunch of his Gargoyles. I killed this Pyrovore. I almost killed his Neurotyrant. And I killed 1 Neurolictor, but I didn't kill anything else. So I think there really is a problem with Tyranids punching up into higher toughness. We don't have very many things of high volume, consistent damage. I mean, sure, the Tyranifex is anti-tank, but it's, I did not have a high Tyrant on this list. He did. His relative movement was higher, and he was able to free strat out the Feel No Pains or the sustained crits on Old One Eye and the Carnifex squad. So I think coming out of this game, I think I may have realized actually that Crusher Stampede does want to run a high Tyrant. They need the relative speed on the gun bugs or the acid fexes on turn 1 and 2, because moving 9 without an advance, it takes you 2 or 3 turns to get in position to take a center objective or a side objective, whereas with the advances, it would be 1 to 2 turns. I also think I'm learning that I do also need more Gargoyles on this list. So if we do get point drops coming up, I will be adding a 3rd or 4th squad of 10 Gargoyles. Take an objective, we can take the pressure off of our other units, and they essentially have to kill the Gargoyles in order to take that objective back because it's up to OC20. So this game, although I was feeling pretty bad because I felt like I could do better than 1-2 at this RTT, all things considered, I think playing another Tyranids player at least gave me some perspective that I do want to run a high Tyrant in Crusher Stampede lists going forward. I do think he still needs point drops, but I'll be playtesting some lists in the weeks going forward. But anyway, last photo here. As you can see, like I said, those Carnifexes and Old One, I made that 12-inch charge around the crates here in order to base my Maleceptor. This was the death knell. I mean, that 12-inch charge basically meant that there was no more screening. He could move all of his bugs up freely. I was trying to move my Tyranifex out to the corners and my Rippers out to the corners so that I could get a Hail Mary investigate signals, and that he wasn't screening his back edge here, so I could Spore Mine the back edge, use the Tyranifex and then both my Rippers to get 8 on Investigate Signals so I could shore up the score. But it was for naught on my last turn. I drew my secondaries and I couldn't score any on the last turn. So final score ended up being 52 to 68. This was my lowest scoring game, I think, since last November. Also, I felt like I was playing timidly because I knew that he had better damage output and higher movement. So it is what it is. I think that it was just luck of the draw, and I don't know. Like I'm a little disappointed. I really wanted to go 2-1 at the very least, but I guess it's not all for naught. I guess I'm adding to the reduction of the Tyranid win rate so that hopefully we can get buffs in the months going forward, either by point changes in April or datasheet and detachment changes in June, as I've heard the rumors. So just to round things out here, if you are new to the channel here, I believe I've gained 50 subscribers since my last video, which is awesome. Welcome everybody. I love to do new content here to help people get better at the game, and it's all self-reflection. I'm going to be criticizing my own gameplay here, the things I do well or do not do well. Like I said, going forward, I am going to keep running Crusher Stampede. I think I'm going to try out using the Hive Tyrant as a utility piece to give a lot of those gun bugs the assault aura so that they can advance up, get cheekier angles, and shoot on turns 1 and 2. So that content will be coming up in the next week or so. Additionally, we're about 3 weeks out from point changes from the Munitorum, so I'll be doing some wish listing and some prediction videos, and then after that, I'll be readjusting my tier list based off of point changes. But again, I just want to thank everybody for being here, giving me your time and your attention, and I hope you learned something today. And I'll catch you next time on Prometheus.